Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to Utility Sports. Today, we're going to be doing something a little bit different here ahead of free agency, and I'm actually going to be going over my dream offseason for my New York Jets. For those of you who do not know or are new to the channel, I am a New York Jets fan, and I had to deal with quite a bad year this year, and we haven't had a very good year in quite some time. For those of you who don't know about the New York Jets, it has been over a decade since our last playoff appearance. I'm hoping to turn that around for my New York Jets. So today's mock offseason for what my dream offseason would look like for the New York Jets. This will entail free agency, some re-signs. We obviously just did tag Marcus May. I have an idea of what I would like to do with him as well. But at this point, this is my dream offseason. This is what I want my New York Jets to do. Now, this doesn't mean I think that this will happen. For example, I think Zach Wilson will be the second overall pick, but I don't have him being my dream solution there for the New York Jets. There will be some trades in this video as well. So let me know in the comments below if you'd like to see this for another team. Also, we have a Trevor Lawrence jersey giveaway on the channel going on right now. It's a Jacksonville Jaguars black Trevor Lawrence jersey. To enter into it, all you have to do is hit subscribe today, smash the like button on the video, and also don't forget to comment anything. It could be anything from Trevor Lawrence jersey giveaway or just something about this video. Thank you guys again so much for the support, and now let's jump into it here with looking at New York Jets. The salary cap space we have this offseason is roughly $67 million after tagging Marcus May. We had about 77.5. Marcus May's tag is about 10.5 million with the new adjusted salary cap of 182.5. That is a pretty steep decline, actually, which is going to lead to an interesting free agency period. It's about $16 million less than this past year, which is going to put some teams into a tough spot where they're not going to really be able to keep on to all their players. And it might be a little bit of a slower acting offseason, which opens the doors for a team like the New York Jets, the Jacksonville Jaguars, a few others that have salary cap space to really be aggressive this offseason and go get guys that maybe they wouldn't be able to lure away otherwise, because some of these other teams are a little bit tighter on the cap now that the money did jump down a little bit. So who are our key free agents that we need to keep? First of all, safety Marcus May. He got the franchise tag. They have until July 15th to work out a long-term extension with him. Otherwise, it'll be another year playing on his final year of his contract, and they'll have to figure out what they want to do with him. I have my ideas on what I want to have happen with Marcus May. Cornerback Brian Poole, I want him back. I think his contract's going to be around $5 to $7 million. He's going to be a slot corner. I think that's right around his price range. Didn't have a great year this year. 2 years ago, played very well out of the slot. I think that he's going to be a guy who has a little bit of a market. I think he'll be a tough guy for the Jets to keep, but I think that that should be priority one out of this list. Also, wide receiver Rashad Perriman, edge Jordan Jenkins, and edge Terrell Basham are all guys that I think are going to be key free agent losses here for the Jets. Out of these guys, I think edge Terrell Basham is the one I would prefer to keep over the others. He's going to be a little bit cheaper than Jordan Jenkins. Doesn't quite have the production, but I think he fits better into Robert Saleh's defense, our new head coach. I think Basham is a solid rotational edge for us. I think that edge is going to be the key position to address, though, this offseason. Now, when it comes to Marcus May, I think this is time to trade him. He's 28 years old, just turned 28 on March 9th, which was yesterday. And now at this point, does he really fit into a long-term rebuild here for the New York Jets? I don't think he does. I think his value is going to be about a third-round pick. Not great value based on what he is as a player, but I think that's got to be a move you got to look to make if you're Joe Douglas. I just don't really see Marcus May fitting into the cards of what we're going to really do. He's going to take a lot of money in free agency if we were to extend him before that July 15th deadline. I just don't really like the fit long-term. I think Marcus May is going to be a guy we have to trade. So here are the key positional needs for us. And remember now, after those two guys that I talked about, Terrell Basham and also Brian Poole there, we have about $60 million in cap space now at this point. And key positional needs are quarterback, running back, wide receiver, interior offensive line, offensive tackle, edge, and cornerback. Edge and cornerback being the two biggest in my estimation on the defensive side of the ball. And those are really two of the most important positions in football. QB also the most important position in football on the offensive side. But I just don't really see a way to address quarterback in free agency this offseason. That would have to come through the draft if we do decide to do that. So who are the top tier free agents that I would be interested in? Well, first of all, it's guard Joe Thuney from the New England Patriots. Second is edge Shaq Barrett. I think Shaq Barrett is the second best free agent available this offseason, and I think that he should be the Jets' main priority, actually. And third is Shaquille Griffin, the cornerback out of Seattle. He's only 26 years old. He would be an interesting bring in for the New York Jets. Shaq Barrett is 28. Joe Thuney is not super young either, but those are at positions where they age a little bit better than, say, a cornerback does. I think Thuney and Shaq Barrett would be number 1 and 2 for me in what I want. And I'm looking at it as about, hey, we have $35 million or so that we could afford to spend per year on two of these guys, probably, because I don't see a way that we could get all three of them for $35 million annually. Also, some other free agency options would be veteran cornerback Richard Sherman, who has spent time with Robert Saleh, played for him in San Francisco. Saleh obviously being the defensive coordinator there. Also, edge Everson Griffin. I think he's another one of those guys who's going to be able to come in on a cheaper, short-term deal, kind of a prove-it deal, and he's going to fit right into what Robert Saleh wants to do on that defense with a 4-3 front, someone who can get off the edge quickly, has good bend as a pass rusher, and I think that he can get after the quarterback still, even at his age 33 season. Now, some youth guys that I would like to look at adding this offseason. Edge, Takk McKinley. I think a big thing for Robert Saleh's defense will be having a lot of edge depth. Terrell Basham staying, Everson Griffin coming in, prioritizing Shaq Barrett in free agency, and looking to bring in Takk McKinley. You have 4 edges there that can rotate in and out. You keep them fresh. You are looking at a much improved New York Jets defensive line, defensive front. You need to get after the quarterback more, and bringing in some of these guys gives you the optionality to get after the quarterback, still impact the run game. These guys can do both, and I think Shaq Barrett would headline that free agency class for us. But some of these other guys that are cheaper options would be good additions as well, even if we do get Shaq Barrett or even if we do not get Shaq Barrett. Some other youth wide receivers, Rashad Higgins, Josh Reynolds. You're looking at cheaper options to maybe replacing Rashad Perriman. He didn't have a great year last year, kind of was injured, didn't really get a lot to run. And I'm looking really here at a third wide receiver. Denzel Mims and Jamison Crowder will be back. Maybe we look at one in free agency or in the draft, rather. At this point, you're just looking for a depth wide receiver and a young guy who can maybe come in, play pretty well for you, and then get himself another opportunity elsewhere after his short-term deal. So here are the total moves that I would be aggressive in trying to make if I'm Joe Douglas. 1, re-signing slot cornerback Brian Poole to a 2-year, $12 million deal. That's worth about $6 million annually. I think that's what his price range is about after this past season, which he struggled a little bit more. My other move, prioritizing re-signing edge Terrell Basham to a 2-year, $9.5 million deal, just a little bit short of $5 million annually. That might be a little bit of an overpay based on what his production is, but it's at a very meaningful position. And I think that he fits better into Robert Saleh's defense than he did in defense years past with Greg Williams and so on. Also now, we get to real free agents here. Sign guard Joe Thuney to a 4-year, $58 million deal. That's just about $14.5 million annually. That is a very steep price to pay for a guard, I'm fully aware, but I think he is well worth every single penny. Over the last 3 years, I believe he's had 3 holding penalties. That is incredible. He's disciplined. Played in New England. We're pulling away from a division rival here, and he's the best guard in the class. He's one of the top offensive free agents available, and he's at a huge positional need for the New York Jets. We need to build up our offensive line, and there's not a better option than Joe Thuney in free agency. Then, staying in the trenches, we're going to go sign edge Shaq Barrett to a massive, massive deal. 4-year, $82 million deal worth over $20.5 million annually. If there was one on this list that I wouldn't feel confident about actually being able to get done, it is signing edge Shaq Barrett. That's why we have to pay so much money for him, over $20 million a year. That is massive payday for Shaq Barrett. But I think that's something you're going to have to do if you're the New York Jets. With the salary cap going down a little bit, kind of forces Tampa Bay's hand. They don't have a lot of money to work with. Overpaying Shaq Barrett a little bit at this over $20 million mark is the way to get him. And I think this is the best chance the New York Jets have of greatly improving their pass rush year 1 of Robert Saleh. Then some of the other free agents I had mentioned, go out, sign cornerback Richard Sherman to a 1-year, $8 million deal. We need an outside cornerback bad. He comes in short-term deal, a little bit of an overpay on the annual average value here at $8 million. He's not an $8 million cornerback anymore, but it's a 1-year prove-it deal. Comes into a team that's not necessarily a contender, but he gets to go play with his former coach. We know how much he likes Robert Saleh, and I think that this fit makes a lot of sense for Sherman and the Jets on a short-term contract. Everson Griffin, the edge I talked about earlier, comes in 1-year, $5 million deal. Again, probably a slight overpay based on what his value is at this point, but you have to overpay a little bit when you're a bad team, not necessarily in that competition stretch yet. You need to just focus on improving, getting better, and Everson Griffin's going to be a short-term option to help our pass rush and help us in the run game as well. Then signed wide receiver Josh Reynolds to a 2-year, $11 million deal. That's one of those cheaper options I was talking about at that wide receiver position. I think there's good upside there. And at this point now, we've used about $64 million, including our re-signing of players. Most of our salary cap space is gone at this point. We don't have a lot to roll over. That's a little bit tough. But when you have to go out and pay guys like Joe Thuney, Shaq Barrett to really improve this team, you're going to have to use a lot of salary cap space. I hope you guys understand that. Richard Sherman, you're looking at a much improved team already just off of these 7 moves here at this point. Cornerback play is going to be a lot better with Sherman. Edge play, much, much, much better with Shaq Barrett, Everson Griffin, and Terrell Basham in the folds. I think that this is a better situation for the New York Jets. Now, building off of this, who do I not want in free agency? If the New York Jets make these moves, I might have a hissy fit. That is one, running back Aaron Jones. I do not want to pay a running back more than $12 million in free agency. Don't get me wrong, Aaron Jones, a very good player. I'm just not interested in him being the option for the New York Jets. He's so expensive in free agency. Some teams are going to want to bid on him. I get that. I think he's a better fit in Miami, somewhere that's already built. Him going to New York, I think that would be a real disaster for my New York Jets. Wide receiver Will Fuller. I think he's a great fit on paper. I just don't like what he's going to get on the market. He's going to get overpaid drastically, and he's already 26, 27 years old. He's not a young wide receiver anymore at this point. Has had injury concerns, got suspended this past year. I just don't think that he should be in Joe Douglas's mindset for the New York Jets despite his fit with the roster. Hunter Henry at tight end, I just don't think he's worth paying north of $10 million, and I think that's where his market's headed with teams like the Jaguars. Probably the Jets will be interested. Ultimately, I hope we do get outbid on Hunter Henry, though. I do not want him to be a New York Jet. I would much rather focus the trenches than the skill positions this offseason and try and build up the skill positions through the draft and so on. So what does a dream draft scenario look like for me? First of all, pick 2, we trade down with the Carolina Panthers. We get picks 8 and 39 for that deal. The Carolina Panthers move up, get their franchise quarterback, Zach Wilson, which I think is a much better situation for all teams involved. Zach Wilson will be much better off in Carolina than he is with the New York Jets at this point. That's just facts. They got better coaching there. They've got a better offensive fit around Zach Wilson at this point, and the Jets still have so much to build up that a trade down makes a lot of sense. So at pick 8, we grab Kyle Pitts there, tight end out of Florida. I would be surprised if he goes in the top 7. I think he's a top 4 player in the class, to be honest with you. I just don't necessarily know if I see a team taking him. Maybe Philadelphia at 6. But even then, if that happens, there's going to be some wideouts that fall to the Jets. I think that trading down to pick 8 is the most logical move for the New York Jets on draft night, and grabbing Kyle Pitts, that's a home run pick to me. He's the best tight end in the class, not even close. He's one of the best tight ends we are going to see coming out of college over the last 5 to 10 years. He's an absolute dynamic playmaker, 6'6", outmatches cornerbacks on the outside. Linebackers aren't fast enough to keep up with him on the inside. He's going to be a total mismatch. You can play him all over the field. I really like this fit for the New York Jets. Then at pick 23, our pick from Seattle, we take Najee Harris, the running back out of Alabama. I said I didn't want to pay a tight end or a running back in free agency. Now we come back, draft 2 of them in the first round, get 5 years of team control on these guys for pretty good contracts. And at this point, the Jets are looking way better. LaMichael Pirine, Ty Johnson, they don't get the job done in the backfield. Najee Harris is the most dynamic runner in this class, runs with power, runs with agility. We saw how great he was for Alabama. He's going to be a monster for the New York Jets as well. Grabbing him and Kyle Pitts is an absolute dream scenario in the first round. At pick 34, Jets come back, draft Wyatt Davis. I know we already signed a guard. We need another one. Wyatt Davis is an absolute run mauler. He can get out, block into the second and third level, can put guys down on their butts. He's an absolute road grader there at that position. And the Jets come back with now Mekhi Becton, Joe Thuney, Wyatt Davis on their offensive line. That is a strong offensive line. No longer becomes a weak point of this football team, but in fact, a strong point for them. Pick 39 also coming from the Carolina Panthers here. And this one is focused on grabbing Kelvin Joseph, the cornerback out of Kentucky. He's really flying up boards. Not a lot of film on him. He had played 1 year at LSU, only played about 6 games, transferred over to Kentucky, played 9 games this year. We only have 15 games of tape on him. And even then, not a lot of run when he was at LSU, so we don't have a lot on him. He's a guy, though, that has a lot of potential. He's a 6'1" frame, pretty good weight, about 180 pounds. Could put on a little bit more muscle yet at this point. He's only 21 years old, though, and he's going to be a guy who can undercut routes, plays pretty conservatively over the top as well. I think he's got a lot of upside. at that cornerback position. Already having brought in Richard Sherman gives him a year to kind of adjust into our system. We have Bryce Hall as well. I think Kelvin Joseph and Bryce Hall could be the outside cornerbacks of the future for the New York Jets, especially with Richard Sherman providing that bridge here as one of our starting outside corners. Pick 66 and 87 in the third round here. Focus more on defense. Come back, grab Quincy Roche, another edge out of Miami. If you guys haven't noticed, I'm really prioritizing grabbing edges here for Robert Saleh's defense for my New York Jets. Quincy Roche, an absolute beast, had a lot of production before going to Miami. Not the greatest year at Miami, but I think he's a guy who has a lot of upside, especially in the run game defensively at that edge position. I think he's a great fit in Robert Saleh's defense. And then Paris Ford at safety out of Pittsburgh. And my reasoning on why I want him is because, remember, I think it's time to move on from Marcus May. Paris Ford comes in. Him and Ashton Davis are going to be the future at that safety spot. And I think that is a smart move for the New York Jets now at this point. This is my dream draft scenario with how the offseason had played out for me through free agency. Make sure you guys are subscribed because we will be keeping you up to date on everything that happens during free agency. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next video.